Series 2 is brought to you with the kind support of the William Blair Active Share podcast. In Series 2 of the 2022 50 Faces podcast, we discuss taking a stand against climate change, against bias, against outdated recruitment processes, and against stereotypical thinking. We hear why one thought leader chose a path in academia in a quest to move the needle on sustainability.
I remember the first time I did a deal. It was a great feeling. The next day, the Financial Times front page was describing that deal. And then the day afterwards, the headlines were something different. And I thought, well, I've spent 7 months of my life solving one company's problems at one point in time. Whereas in academia, if you write a paper, that could be timeless.
We hear about calling out damaging generalizations.
The title of the article was Hedge Fund Managers Who Are Mothers Saw Weaker Performance During Pandemic-Related School Closures. I just immediately got on the phone and started calling people. We need a public retraction.
About scrutinizing recruitment processes to make them better.
For every role that we have, we evaluate the diversity of our pipeline at each step of the process.
We hear why encouraging a climate of inclusion is critical, particularly as it relates to people with disabilities.
People with disabilities think differently. It's that simple. And thinking differently when you're an entrepreneur is actually a massive asset.
And we hear how taking a stand sometimes means striking out alone.
Every time I think about giving up and shifting to do something that's easier, I remember that feeling of being the only one in my first employer. And it was not a safe space for me to be myself.
As always, we hear the many strands of our upbringing that shape our perspectives, whether from farming.
There's a lot of lessons you learn watching your parents farm that is very useful as an investor. The main one for me was perseverance.
From sports.
In my sports career in college, I peaked early. And my greatest lesson of my entire athletic career, frankly, was learning how to continue to put the brave face forward and do my best to encourage everyone around me while I was suffering on a personal level with not being at the peak of my game.
Or from surviving unimaginable horror.
I was a survivor of the World Trade Center, so I was there that day and actually ran out of the way of the building falling. But after doing that, it left me saying life is a blessing. I never complain about getting older. I think about those people who weren't given the chance.
We hear how the mundane sometimes prepares you for the unexpected.
When Lehman Brothers went bust and we were told to pack our boxes and vacate the building, a lot of people were quite hysterical and panicky and anxious about what was going to happen and really sort of thinking about their jobs. And for me, the first emotion that kicked in my mind was a memory of what had happened at the University of Zambia many years earlier when the university abruptly closed and we were told to pack our bags and leave.
And finally, we hear about the standards we set for ourselves and what drives us to succeed.
I never had a hurdle that anybody else gave me that was ever close to the hurdle I gave myself. And so I was always holding myself to a higher standard.
Tune in to hear from our 10 inspiring guests in Series 2. You can find all of our podcasts at the 50 Faces Hub, together with other resources such as affinity groups, internships and job opportunities, coaching and tips for well-being. Please follow us on Twitter, YouTube and LinkedIn, and rate us on Apple Podcasts to spread the word.